Okay, it's different types of feminism. We know this from looking at last year. The first one is liberal feminism, who believe that society can change as a result of democracy and a change in culture. So there's a big focus on the social construction of gender rather than sex, biological sex. And these changes can happen culturally and also over time, and also are embedded through socialisation. So for change to occur in the liberal feminist sides, then these need to be addressed to achieve equality. They're very critical of functionalist gender roles, obviously. So they don't believe that a woman, because she is a woman and a child bearer, she needs to look after these children or stay at home and look after and perform their instrumental roles. Liberal feminists also actually believe that this is a win-win thing, because by gaining women's emancipation, men will also gain too, so they will get more time off for paternity leave, and they'll also be free to express their more feminine, nurturing side and look after children. And current gender stereotypes force them to suppress these and not act in this sort of way. Okay, a quick evaluation of liberal feminism, in that it's positive in that they do identify that there's evidence of gender inequality and it has existed over time, but this is generally down as a result of socialisation and the typical functionalist nuclear family type of family, and a move away from that is actually helping. They are criticised, however, for being very over-optimistic, especially in terms of the Equal Pay Act and the kind of reforms that have been put in place. Other feminists, such as radical feminists, believe that the structural barriers are still there in place, and these small steps forward are like drops in the ocean and very difficult to actually make a real change in their emancipation. That moves us on to the radical feminism, and they believe that patriarchy is the issue and it is universal. It's the most primary form of inequality, and happens within wider society, and it happens within the home. Firestone believes that the origins of this come from the biological role, so the fact that women are women and they are the bearers of children, and they care for the infants at the very earliest stage, is that this is how it actually should be, and since they perform this role, then they are very much dependent on men to go out and do the work, because they are at home looking after the children. They believe all men oppress women, and there's nothing, whether it's in wider society in terms of employment, or whether it's in the home in terms of unpaid domestic labour, or the idea that men see women as their kind of sexual objects, and they should give themselves up unto men when they say. And this leads radical feminists to believe that all men are oppressors of women. Oppression of women is a very public and private sphere, as I've said, in terms of inequality of employment and the role of women within wider society, but also within the private sphere. And they look at this idea of sexual politics as a mean of control. Men believe that they have ownership and dominate women, and they do this through sex and the relationships that they have, and this is a form of them showing their power within a relationship. So because of this, patriarchy constructs sexuality. It's not a biological thing. It's not this idea that men are constructed, that it's a biological urge. Sexuality is a natural biological urge. Well, radical feminists believe that actually it's not. It's a patriarchal construction, that it's a form of men controlling women, and it's all about satisfying their desires rather than a biological urge. It's a idea in their head about the control over women. So to free themselves from oppression, radical feminists believe women should adopt a number of strategies, the first being separatism, and actually removing themselves from men living in all-female households, as suggested by Jermaine Greer, as an alternative to the heterosexual nuclear family household, because men are the issue. So if you remove the need to be with men, then that is part of the plan. consciousness raising in that by joining groups and sharing experiences of domestic violence or sharing bad experiences with other women, then actually it will make other women understand the issues and, you know, kind of have some collective action. It can't be a single woman. It needs to be lots and lots of women who are actually opposed to this sort of oppression. And the final thing is, because men are seen as the enemy, and being in a heterosexual relationship with a man is like sleeping with the enemy, radical feminists believe that the only non-oppressive form of sexuality is lesbianism, and it's a choice rather than a biological thing. Some valuations of radical feminists is that, yes, they do draw awareness of this personal oppression actually being a political oppression. This can be done through marriage and domestic violence and rape and things like that, and it's a form of domination. But they also criticised by Marxists for disagreeing that it's not actually men that oppress women, it's capitalism as a whole, and one of the reasons that domestic violence, etc., occurs isn't because men want to control women, it's because of the pressures of a capitalist society. They make assumptions that all women are in the same position and ignores other factors such as class, for instance, and also Somerville and other liberal feminists believe that they ignore the fact that women want to be in heterosexual relationships and there's an attraction between men and women, and so separateness and political lesbianism isn't really an option to make change. That leaves us on to Marxist feminists then, in that there's the roots are in capitalism, and women are seen as a reserve army of cheap labour, and that they're there just to reproduce the economic workforce, and also the absorbers of anger that we discussed on the previous slide. So Marxist feminists believe that we need to overthrow capitalism to actually liberate women. Barrett came up with this idea as of feminism, and Barrett believes that it's not just about overthrowing capitalism, that's not enough. We have to also overthrow the ideology of the nuclear family and this natural, normal family, because these ideologies underpin the role that women need to play. The nuclear family is portrayed as being very natural to women and being like the ideal and normal, and we need to actually overthrow this idea alongside capitalism for women to be duly freed. Sociologists such as Hartman and Wallaby believe that there's actually this dual system between economic and sexual systems, in that we have to see how a lack of economic opportunities, in employment drives many women into marriage, and then dependency on men. And once within that system, men then kind of enforce women through this patriarchy to stay within that type of family, and that reduces the opportunities. So it's not one system of economy and like the sex-gender system of patriarchy, one leads into the other. An evaluation of Marxist feminists is that, what about non-capitalist societies? You know, these issues of patriarchy, etc., still exist in these societies, so it can't just be a class capitalism thing. It also fails to address the gender role of domestic labour. Just because we live in a capitalist society doesn't mean that men can't do their fair share within the family, and why it's women doing the majority of the domestic labour in the household. And they also seem to neglect the ways of oppression, so it's not just a capitalist society, but also men oppressing women, and how it's men actually benefiting from unpaid labour, not anyone else. The final type that we're going to look at is difference feminism, and that they argue that women are not homogenous, and that the experiences of a middle-class woman, a working-class woman, a black woman, a heterosexual, lesbian, etc. are completely different, and they experience different types of oppression, such as patriarchy, capitalism, racism, homophobia, etc., etc. They believe that other feminist movements fail to move away from this Western white middle-class assumption, and the neglect, black women's experience of oppression, and the fact that black women actually view the family as quite a positive thing and an escape and resistance to wider racism in society. Post-structural feminism, which is part of the difference approach, believes that it's the discourse of power, it's the language that's used that describes women and the roles that women play within society that helps empower oppression and also will help empower women. So if we stop using words such as mother and child bearer, then this will actually help. And also if we stop looking at child birth as a medical kind of condition, then we won't pass on the power to doctors and things like that. Valuation of this is that by putting women into all these different subgroups, it weakens their case instead of strengthening the case. Feminists believe that they should be working as one to try and fight oppression by actually segregating them into subgroups. It actually weakens their view. Siegel believes that oppression is not about the language used and the discourse. She's critical of difference feminists actually ignoring real social structures and the real issues within society, the physical things such as lack of employment and things like that, not the way that we talk about women. Sorry about the length of this video, but obviously we're run out of time in terms of the year. We'll discuss this further on Friday. I'll see you all then. Bye-bye.